It's 1975. Gerald Ford sits in the Oval Office as the 38th President of the United States. Across the nation, a gallon of gasoline costs just 57 cents, and the average American home sells for under $40,000. But while the economy hums and disco fills the airwaves, a quiet revolution is taking place on the streets in southern Jefferson County, a revolution in emergency care. In 1975, the idea of highly trained paramedics racing to the scene of a medical crisis was still new. Only a few thousand paramedics served in the entire United States, most concentrated in major cities. In rural towns, such as Festus and Crystal City, ambulances were often station wagons with little more than a stretcher in the back. Heart attacks, car crashes, and sudden illnesses were treated on the way to the hospital, not at the scene. But change was coming to our hometown. Inspired by military medics in Vietnam, communities began embracing a bold new vision, bringing advanced medical care directly to the patient. Defibrillators, IV medications, and airway interventions, once only found in hospital emergency rooms, were now being placed in the hands of specially trained men and women on the front lines. In September 1975, emergency medical services stood at a crossroads, an untested idea poised to transform public health. This is the story of how it began for JPAD, told by the people who made it possible.
My name is Kurt Steve, retired chief here at the JPAD Ambulance District. Started back in 1978 as an EMT. Never really considered this to be my career job. I basically started with the intention of going on someplace else, but 1979 I became a paramedic, and then got on the crew, and the rest is history. I've had 44 years of service here at the ambulance district. Promoted captain, then from captain I was promoted to chief, administrator / chief back in 1997. So very proud of how the district has grown, how things have gone over the years, and how it continues to grow. So back in the early days, you know, the ambulance district, everything was new. Emergencies used to be handled by the funeral homes. If somebody had an emergency, they'd call one of the local funeral homes. It could be Vineyards, Poley, Katy. They were the ones that everybody called. The state changed the law back in the 70s. You know, you had to have 2 people on the ambulance, and you had to have oxygen on the ambulance, which was sort of a thing that the funeral homes never really did. And it became to be a cost factor for them. So that's when the push to start forming ambulance districts started. JPAD was formed with the help of a lot of the community people. The Chamber of Commerce was very involved. The local funeral homes were very involved in it because they knew that they couldn't really, cost-wise, could no longer continue to provide that service. Then as things evolved, you know, people started seeing us more as professionals. You know, in the early days, whenever you had a call, we had a phone number. It was, 937-3666. So they called that number. We had a Crystal City Dispatch, was our dispatcher at the time. They'd answer the phone, and we'd listen in on the other end. We'd get the emergency, we'd get in the truck, and we'd go to the emergency. And then as more emergency services come along, the push toward 911 came in. So when 911 came in, that's when a lot of the left Crystal City, went to the city of Festus. They were our dispatcher, and then as we got busier and busier and more calls, it was hard for Festus to continue to provide that service. So at that time, we went to Jefferson County 911. And I guess the biggest thing is just the way the technology has changed over the years with communications and everything. Like I said, it's just hard for some of the smaller dispatching agencies to continue to provide that service. You know, when I first started here, we had a 3-lead EKG. I mean, it was called the MRL or the MERL. So, you know, all you had was 3 leads. Then as time evolved, then we came to 12 leads. We didn't have what they called standing orders at that time. So anytime we would have a patient, we would assess them. We'd go call the hospital, get permission to start an IV, give any medication. Then as the hospital and the doctors became more used to the, EMS, they gave us more leeway and to give us standing orders. So basically we come in, we assess them, we'd go ahead and do what we had to do to stabilize them. And I think one of the biggest things, as I said, is over the years is just the change in technology. Like I said, when I started, stretchers, they handle about a 300-pound patient. And you had to bend down, pick them up. Now, they have 12 and 15 lead AKGs. The stretchers now are, power stretchers. You just push a button, they lift them up. Now is with EMS, it is definitely a career. Back when I started, it really wasn't a career path. I mean, you with an ambulance district, most people want to go to the fire district because they've seen that as more of a career path. But now over the years, EMS and the ambulance districts and stuff are definitely a career path forward for young people. When I was younger, I used to watch Emergency 911. I think anybody my age, that was one of the big shows back then, Johnny and Roy doing the thing. Enjoyed watching that show. And also, I was a junior firefighter back for Peevely Valley Fire Department when I was 13. So when I started doing that, then we started running what they called inhalator calls back then. That was basically someone had shortness of breath. You'd go to their house, you'd take the inhalator, which was an oxygen bottle, and administer them oxygen. And that really intrigued me. So I basically started, getting into that. Originally, though, I went to college and took up office machine repair, which good thing I didn't stick with that because, as we can see, things have changed. Then I got a phone call from the guidance counselor, and he said, "Hey, Joachim Platten's looking for somebody. Are you interested?" So I came down, applied, and fortunately I was hired. And you worked 24 hours on call. You were on duty 24 hours, and you were off for 48 hours. So you're around each other quite a bit. So one of the things that we used to do, and on our days off, a lot of us, we go hunting, go up, shoot guns, we'd go hunting, we'd go fishing, but we always sort of hung around. And in the early days, we were slower, so we didn't really run that many calls. So a lot of times we would just hang around down at the station, and if a call came in, we would jump in the second ambulance and go up there because, like I said, back then you had maybe 1 or 2 calls a day. And, when you're young, you wanted to answer those calls. You wanted to, feel that adrenaline and run on those calls. So that was one of the things that, over the years, the camaraderie, that's how we pretty much built it. Basically, it was like a big family. I found it's a very rewarding field. It really is. Like I said, I did this for 44 years. I got a part-time job now, and in my part-time job, I still have people that come up to me and said, "Hey, I remember you. You picked me up." I had a gentleman the other day say, "You remember when you pulled me out of that car down there on Platten Creek?" He goes, "You saved my life." And, I barely remember, but, it's things like that. I mean, it is rewarding. I know at times that you run a lot of these different calls where that you don't think they need an ambulance, and it's tough. I get it. I totally understand that. I've had that feeling too. But in the end, it's all about taking care of people. Okay, it's all about being nice. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's somebody's mom, that's somebody's dad, somebody's brother. So that's what you need to remember. When I'm out in public, some people come up to me, "Hey, I remember you. You taught me CPR class, or you did this." So I know at times it seems it's why am I doing this? But in the end, it's about making a difference in people's lives, and that's what we do in EMS. And I can't say enough about Joachim Platten and what it has done over the years. And we probably touched every life in this district some way or another, with their family members or to their friends. And that's when you stop and look at it, that's a big thing. That really is. 50 years of service, and all the people that we have, lives that we have saved, things that have been done. We just need to step back and think, how great that is for the community, and what a great asset this district has been for this community over the 50 years.
My name's David McFarland, and I started working for JPAD in 1975. There were 5 of us that were originally hired. We used volunteers along with our full-time personnel. In fact, I ran myself and a fellow by the name of John LeBou. We ran the first call for JPAD in 1975. So times have changed. We had old Cadillac ambulance and type 2, 2 type 2, I think, ambulances. Times have really changed. I've never would have envisioned us having 6 houses. That first year we ran 345 calls. People looked at us not too friendly in some ways. They looked at us a bit skeptical. They wonder why we charged. We charged $35 a local call and $65 if we took them to St. Louis. And times have changed there too. I mean, it's a business now. All the people in our district can be proud of. The employees are proud of it, and the people around here should be very proud of it. I guess the one person that meant more to me than anyone in the early days of JPAD was Gene Butler. He retired from the Highway Patrol. He didn't know as much about EMS as myself or my coworker did, but he was there. And he worked midnights, he worked days, until his wife Harriet got sick. And he was there with us almost 2 years. And then at that point, about the 2 year point, I became administrator, and I held that position for 20 years. Then I went back out in the field for another 12 years, for a total of 34 years. Sure, the guys used to just sitting outside, just being themselves. And somebody yelled, "Hey!" There was a stoplight right in front of us. Somebody said, "Hey," and then duck back, and you're sitting out there, and all you can do is wave to the people. I mean, these were people you didn't know. You would say, "Hey." That's one of the big things that got guys back inside. They quit sitting outside for fear somebody come up and play hay with them. Our first call, I'll never forget the first call. I was on that, John LeBouve and I were on that, and there was a gunshot to the left chest. Fella was sitting up all night, and he ended up sitting in this recliner the rest of the night, and the neighbor found him and called us. He had missed the heart and he missed the great vessels. He was just a little bit off in his aim. He was a little to the right. But that was our first call, and it hasn't changed. It has not changed, except the guys and gals working in the field have gotten so much better than we ever were. It's scary to look back at what little we knew until we all became paramedics and kind of grew along with the community, and we grew into this business, and we grew to where we were pretty good at it, actually. So if you get sick or get hurt, in our district's a place to do it. But it's been a pleasure talking to all of you, and it was an honor working with such a wonderful group of people and a wonderful place. I'll never forget it. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Hi there, I'm Mike Cage, retired captain, Joachim Platte Ambulance District, or as known as JPAD. Looking back at the beginning, Ambulance District was new to the people of this area. They didn't like us. It was free to vineyards, police, and everybody else give them free service. Why should they have to pay for us? And a lot of people wouldn't call us because they had to get paid. Because the fire department ran EMS before there was an ambulance. And it was free. Over my time here at Joachim Platte, there are so many positive changes I can't number. There's just too many to think of. The first one I think of is manpower. We used to be on pagers, and they were terrible. You were on call for a day, and you went on duty a day. So if you had a rough night on call, you were wore out on the duty day. And finally, we got some extra personnel to start doing a rotating shift. Wasn't the best rotating shift in the world, but it worked a lot better on call. Our equipment has improved. We used to have an MRLs, no drugs, had a big drug box that kept breaking open when we carried it. And if you look at the old MRLs, which was the defibrillator, they were Army grade, and they were a big aluminum box, and they all had big dings in the lid of them, big dents. And that's because the ambulance we had were self-unloading. You open the side door and slide it, all the equipment fall on the ground. We were in 1-ton vans. 2 the district bought, and 2 was given to us by the state of Missouri for a discount. We had 401, 402, 403, and 404. My pride and joy was 403. Each crew had their own truck, so you could set it up like you wanted it set up. Cooperation with the doctors is a big thing too. At first, we had to go to St. Louis, and that was Dr. John Shea. Nobody around here, we couldn't get a doctor in Jefferson County. I get into the trucks, we'd run from a little 1-ton Chevy van to the boxes we got now. I think it's what we got the boxes now because we had those vans the first time. The equipment has got this fantastic. The biggest thing I got to say for the next generation of paramedics and EMTs is dedication. It's not always going to be good. I always told my employees when I had them, if you did your best on that call on that day, don't go back and second guess yourself. You've done the best you could in that situation. You can always go back 24 hours and do better. But just stay honest with yourself and do the best you can in each situation. The biggest help I had here was my first partner, Keith DeClue. He was a fun partner to have, but he was a strict partner. He was ex-military. I don't mean he's so strict or not, but he had policies. If we used 1 bag of saline, we put 2 back in the truck. With Keith, I don't care. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning, you didn't go to bed. The truck got fixed first. You got ready for the next call now. Then you took care of sleep or whatever. But Keith put me on the right foot that you always prepare, get your truck started, and get ready for the next call. Don't put it off for tomorrow. The thing that I don't think that our present employees understand is how the board works in administration too well. They're lucky to have a good board. So appreciate what you got, and just work towards keep things status quo. Just keep a good relationship with your board.
Hi, my name's Greg McGuire. I started at Joachim Platten in 1981, and I served through 2024. It's kind of interesting what brought me to the district. I was looking for a place to raise my family in a small community setting, and there was homes being built in the area that were low interest loans, and the realtor told me about the ambulance district. So make a long story short, I stopped by the ambulance district and they so happened to have an opening there, and so it was a God-sent thing. That's when I started. I served first as a crew chief and then as a captain. I'm happy to be retired. Back when I started, the community was always behind the ambulance district. One of the hurdles we had to jump through was EMS was in its infancy, and the local hospital, both the nurses and the doctors, really didn't know what our training was and how what things we were able to do and how we were trained. So before 911 was introduced, the phone would actually ring over a speaker, and either Festus Police or we would answer the call, get the information, and then respond on the call. Over my tenure, I have seen all of those things, both the equipment, the training, and the protocols make a major difference. Where I see that manifest is the hospital now expects us to do certain procedures and accomplish a certain amount of things before we ever get to the hospital. And if they're not done, they want to know why we didn't do them. The person who stood out most in my career was my first partner. That was Kenny Boyer. He took me under his wing. I had a fair amount of experience in the city setting, but Kenny was able to introduce me to the rural setting and how to handle calls when you had limited resources. I would say one of the unique traditions, after the call, you sit down and you go over the call with your partner and whoever else was on the scene. It kind of helps of did you do a good job and what you would do later. The advice that I would give new paramedics and EMTs entering the field is to not be afraid to put your hands on the patient. With all the new technology and equipment, sometimes we forget to just do a good head to toe. The message I have to the district in general is a thank you for taking a young man who was new into the EMS system to give him a place to earn a livable salary, to treat him with such respect, and to see him enter his retirement years well equipped to handle what lies in the future.
Hi, I'm Kevin Dennis, retired paramedic captain. I worked at JPAD for 36 years. I'm what they call a lifer. This is the only place I ever really wanted to work, and I was lucky to have spent my entire career here. I've seen people raise their families, seen their kids raise their families. This will always be a special place to me until the day I die. I'll always be a JPAD guy. I started in 1983 full-time as a paramedic. I worked a little bit before that as an EMT and went on one of the trucks as a full-time paramedic. Back in the day, we were very well received by the general public. EMS was a new thing, and I remember as a younger man when the ambulance district started that everybody was excited when the ambulance come in. And before that, the ambulance service was run out of a funeral home, and once it organized and become somewhat of a 911 system, people were very happy to have it. Over my tenure, the first innovation was we transitioned from van ambulances. We had 5 into the more modern modular type. I remember the first one that we got was quite a thing. And as time went on, I think that was the first thing was the transportation. Cot improved, of course, equipment improved, and then education followed to the point now to where we're one of the leaders in the industry as far as training, equipment, and service. So when I started, more or less my mentors were the older guys. Being a 21-year-old, green as grass, rotated with all of the senior paramedics until I got to the crew chief who was an EMT. I liked working with the old guys and learning. I was always okay with having a boss and working. We would wrestle around, play pool, shoot bows and arrows, lift weights, shoot air guns, just anything to pass the time when you got a bunch of people in a box waiting for a call. And we weren't as busy back then, so we had a little more time on our hands. I think the biggest advice that I could give to people that are in the field these days is to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. It's okay not to be okay, and to seek help and to talk about it. Try to keep yourself in good shape. The lack of sleep, the lack of regular meals, some of the things that you see, but it's okay not to be okay all the time, but take care of yourself. It's hard to believe that it's 50 years already, and knowing that I worked 36 of them. There's a lot of new people. They call the old guys lifers. I'll always be JPAD till the day I die. I'll always have some interest and love for the operation. We got a lot of new young people, and they're doing a great job. And we still have guys that are mentoring them. There's still a few of the old guys around that are teaching the new ones. And that's the biggest thing is pass it on. Be proud of it. It's been here for a long time. We started with basically nothing and grown into a big operation. We have the best equipment. We have the best training. We have the best vehicles and the best people. I'd put them up against anyone. JPAD, in my mind, will always be the place to be.